What's up, guys? Welcome to the Put Me In Coach podcast,
where we go beyond the headlines and deep dive everything NFL.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Andy.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. What is going on, my man? How are you?
What's the word? I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're going down to Duval, Florida.
Jacksonville.
Yeah. A team that I am in like with, but having a difficult time falling in love with. We're going to try to unpack why. Yeah. So, look, let's just get right into it. Go ahead and roll the clip. Let's get it.
Right, I got his flame sword.
I'll go one further. I'm in love with their quarterback, but I don't like the family around him. You know what I mean? It's like when you're in love with your girlfriend and you go meet the Fockers. It's meet the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know, that's what it is. It's like I'm not sure I like this family that you have, and they're like, what? Why not? It's like, well, spend the next 38 minutes with us, and we'll let you know why. You know, but
I got nipples. Can you milk me, Greg?
No, period.
I had no idea you could milk a cat.
Oh, yeah, you can milk anything with nipples.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Okay, could we change subject, perhaps?
Yeah, that's exactly.
This is my circle of trust. You're on the outside. Trent Baalke's on the outside of my circle of trust, by the way. We'll get to him later.
Trent Baalke can't even come near my circle.
So before we go off on some of these things, we start with a brief recap of last year. I'm going to keep it short and sweet on my side of things, just because I want to leave a lot of it to you as you discuss Trevor Lawrence, who's one of your favorite players. But just kind of going over things briefly. 9-8 in the AFC South. The team started off 8-3. It felt like it was going in the right direction. Trevor gets hurt. Team goes in the wrong direction. They lose 5 of 6 down the stretch. Houston goes on to win the division. Offensively, they finished, 15th in points per game. Defensively, it was, something similar. They finished in 16th in points allowed. It felt a bit middle of the pack. I think my only issue with last year is not so much the season that Jacksonville had, but it's the lack of nuance, which I know you're going to touch on when you discuss Trevor in terms of discussing why the season ended up the way it was, but also the simple fact that the season that we hold up as this great success in Jacksonville, which is the 22 season, they were also 9-8, so they literally had the same season. The only difference was the 9-8 didn't win the AFC South this time because the division is getting better. It really wasn't by any means a disaster. But I think for Jacksonville fans and for NFL fans, who like the Jaguars, such as myself, it was a bit of a disappointment. So, obviously that was then. This is now. There's a couple of massive contracts that happened this offseason, but we'll start on the offensive side of the ball and honestly with the big story that everybody's talking about right now. So it's a good time to pop this one off. Trevor Lawrence gets a bag. And
gets a bag.
It's a polarizing bag. It's a polarizing bag because a lot of people, they pocket watching, so to speak, right now with this.
Yeah.
They're not liking this bag so much. Where are you on our man Trevor, our beautiful man Trevor, and his
sunshine,
money?
Baby, sunshine?
Where are you on?
I'm not a pocket watcher. I'm a football watcher, and Trevor Lawrence has always been really, really, really good. I mean, when he was in high school, he was really good. When he was at Clemson, he was really good. He was not very good his rookie year, but that I think we all have collectively as sports fans agreed that was a little bit more on Urban Meyer than it was on Trevor Lawrence. And then his first year with a competent, real, mature head coach, he was really good. And then last year he was really good. I know that the problem I have with Trevor is the stat sheet doesn't help my claim. There's a famous meme that goes around, and I'm sure you guys have seen it if you're Jacksonville fans watching this. I know Ian and I have seen it, which is that it takes Trevor's numbers and it compares them to Gardner Minshew's, and they're basically the exact same. And everybody goes, well, what makes Trevor Lawrence any better than Gardner Minshew? And it's like, if you're looking at the stat sheet, I guess nothing. If you ask me, it's the eye test, baby. Like he's got everything. He's got the arsenal. He can run. He can throw. He's an unbelievable leader. He's always in. He's never in the limelight. He's never in drama. He got married at a young age. I don't know. He's just a solid franchise quarterback. He's what you want. He's got a killer arm. He's got killer legs. He's a nice kid. What more do you want from him? You know what I mean? And I guess that the question this last few weeks has been, well, is he worth the money? Is he worth it? Was he overpaid? Was he? The answer is it doesn't matter. The market is what the market is. If that's what the market is paying a 24-year-old 6'6" quarterback who's extending his NFL career for the next 5 years in Jacksonville, that's what it is. It's not for you or me to really decide. Tua's going to get a contract that's fairly large. Is he the best quarterback in the league? No. Has Tua even won a playoff game? I'm not even sure. I mean, I know Justin Herbert hasn't. Justin Herbert actually lost a playoff game to Trevor Lawrence, but we're sitting here nitpicking Trevor Lawrence getting that contract, but we weren't nitpicking Justin Herbert because of all the traits he has. But the same traits that Justin Herbert has, Trevor Lawrence has those same traits. So I guess I don't understand why we treat Justin Herbert like he's a top 5 quarterback, but then treat Trevor Lawrence like he's not even top 20. It doesn't make any sense to me. Trevor Lawrence has walked into a situation that I don't think a single quarterback, I don't think Patrick Mahomes could have succeeded 2021 in Jacksonville with Urban Meyer as his head coach. It was a nightmare. It was a disaster. Everything that went wrong, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. That's just how it was. You bring in Doug Peterson, the team goes 9-8, they win the division. It was a perfect, that playoff game was a perfect example of Trevor Lawrence's career thus far, right? He throws 4 picks in the first half and you're like, oh, this game is over. Trevor Lawrence is overrated. He's not generational. He stinks. And then he comes back in the second half. He's completely perfect. He throws 5 touchdowns, gets them back in the game and wins the game and goes on to play the Chiefs in Arrowhead and has them fighting until the very last minute. And they lose the game by a single touchdown in Arrowhead in his second year in the NFL. I mean, he's 24 years old. Every day, every GM in the league is signing him to that contract, and they're giving him the money. It is what it is. That's just how I feel about it.
It's beautifully said. And, aside... 2 quick points before we move on Trevor Lawrence. The big thing, and I'm sure you're seeing this too, obviously, if I am, you are. The big thing I'm seeing to like, it's like the knock of Trevor, the why he can't be, well, here's why he can't be, is the turnovers, right?
Yep.
Now, I agree. I think with the red zone fumbles, he does need to clean those up, and I think he will. I want to talk about this magical 60 turnovers in 3 seasons that everybody keeps trotting out as this sort of like debunk, that picture of like the guy, like the soy face who's like, like that guy, the NPC guy, like that's a big one they trot out to like try to like prove that he's bad. You know who had at least 60 turnovers in their first 3 seasons as a quarterback in the NFL?
Peyton Manning,
Eli Manning, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, and Big Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
That's good company.
First ballot Hall of Famers. You know what I mean? Like,
and secondly, all first ballot. And secondly, when it comes to sports contracts, I really hate this idea that everyone keeps trotting out as well of like this like reward system. Like you play really well and you like prove it, and then you get the big contract. Why would a team pay a quarterback or any professional athlete, by the way, money based on what they did in the past if they're not expecting them to do it moving forward, right? Like I live out in Los Angeles. The Dodgers didn't sign, Ohtani and then say, yeah, you know what? We're going to pay you in a few years. We just got to see what you do in Dodger blue before we start like doling out tons of money. You want to get you want to get the best years out of the player for the money. And these professional, like these franchise quarterbacks right now have the ability to make an impact on the fucking NASDAQ, right?
Do you know how much I make a year? I mean, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Do you know what would happen if I suddenly decided to stop going into work? A business big enough that it could be listed on the NASDAQ goes belly up. Disappears. It ceases to exist without me.
Like these guys have the ability to move markets. If Joe Burrow disappears from the Cincinnati Bengals, that franchise value tanks overnight. Sponsors pull, the TV deal money goes away. That is what Trevor Lawrence means to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are historically a pretty irrelevant franchise and a 90s expansion team. So I just want people to understand the business side of things before we start talking about why guys don't deserve money, because the NFL is a business. It's a huge brand. It's a huge corporation. And these guys are stars that have the, and Khan, the owner of Jacksonville, he understands that. It's beyond just coaching. It's beyond just stats. It's beyond just winning, to be honest. It's beyond what we like as fans. It's also about sponsors, TV deals, franchise value. All of this stuff comes into play. And Trevor Lawrence has made the Jacksonville Jaguars relevant on the football field and in the boardroom. So I just want to talk about
100%.
that too. Yeah.
Well, I think this is the bad part of all these media talking heads using the word generational when coming out of college. This is the backlash of all of that, because again, nobody batted an eye when the Chargers gave Justin Herbert $52 million a year. Nobody batted an eye. And then when they paid him, everybody said, oh, well, that makes sense. He's been really good. But the whole thing is that we didn't see this coming from Justin Herbert. He was a number 5 pick. He wasn't even the first. He was the 3rd quarterback taken in that draft. And everybody said, oh, wow, this is so cool. No, who expected him to be this good? But the problem is that Trevor Lawrence we've been told Trevor Lawrence was generational since his first year at Clemson. Oh, he's going to be the number 1. He'd be the number 1 draft pick next year, but he can't go to the league. So he's going to have to be the number 1 draft pick 2 years later. And sure enough, he was. And as I just stated, he's delivered fully. And he just hasn't delivered to your liking, I guess, haters. I guess that's where I stand on it. Like, he's completely delivered. Again, you just said it. It's an expansion franchise from the 90s that has never really been good. Who outside of that one random 2017, 2018 year has just been terrible. First overall picks, second overall picks. I don't know.
I think they have like the least valuable stadium too. I mean, they're in talks. I hope this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I pray it doesn't happen.
It's
But they've been the team that's in talks to like potentially be outsourced to London. Which please don't let that happen. Everybody alive in America. It's an American sport. I'd stop with the overseas. That's a whole different conversation. But I think it's really important to start there. Before we get into the conversation about the offensive players, I want to touch very, very, very quickly on one man in particular that I feel is getting the short end of the stick on getting the short end of the credit stick, so to speak, or the value stick within this franchise, and that's Doug Peterson.
Sure.
Our Green Bay video is available for you guys to watch if you like the Packers, or even if you don't. I think it's a lot of really good stuff. But in that video, I went on a bit of a long-winded diatribe about how I felt like Matt LaFleur for the Green Bay Packers is kind of the most underappreciated head coach in the NFL. To me, Doug Peterson's right up there. I know he's not a top 5 guy, maybe not even a top 10 guy, but the Jacksonville Jaguars finished worst in the entire NFL in 2020 and in 2021, Trevor's first year. Doug Peterson took those two teams that had 3 wins combined in 2 seasons to 9-8, division win, playoff win. What Doug Peterson has done with this team, and obviously coming from the Andy Reid coaching tree, a guy who you and I think is the GOAT, frankly.
Yeah.
You can see it, and the difference that he made offensively, the difference that he made with Trevor's confidence, the team morale and confidence of going, oh, this guy's got a ring. We better listen to what this guy has to say.
Yeah.
It's paid dividends, and I think this team is competitive not just because of Trevor. Trevor deserves a lot of credit, but we saw what he was his rookie year with a bad coach. This coach deserves just as much, and I'm going to be quiet about this, but if not more credit than
100%,
even Trevor
totally agree.
Lawrence for this turnaround job. So I just wanted to show some love to Dougie P. Before we went on.
No, I completely agree. But even to to sort of pivot there. I mean, again, I totally agree. I think Doug Peterson is criminally underrated, and I think both you and I, as guys who wanted to see Trevor Lawrence succeed, and we know that he's got all the pieces to be that generational talent that we were told for so many years he is. I think when we saw that hire happen, we were both like, oh yeah, now we're going to really see it. You know what I mean? Now we're really going to now the wheels are going to actually start to, this was the one guy that you could go out and remember they were talking Byron Leftwich was going to maybe come in, or Kellen Moore. And you just felt like that was wrong. It was like, those are wrong. Don't hire somebody who's first year. Go get a guy. And then they hired Doug Peterson. You're just like, yes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Nailed
and it's
it.
worked out. It's completely worked out.
Yeah.
But to pivot a little bit, I don't know if you feel me on this, but I'm a little tired of being kind of gaslit into thinking that there's all these amazing pieces on this offense when frankly there just isn't. I've heard, oh well, you guys paid Christian Kirk $84 million, and they brought in Calvin Ridley. What more help does he need? And it's like, let me just show you guys a little something. I think this is one of the most interesting videos that you can find currently on the internet.
Pull that up, Jamie.
I'm pulling it up fully because this is a 2-minute segment. It's a 2-minute mashup clip of all the dropped touchdown passes last year by pretty much just Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones, but there's a little bit of everybody in there.
My man brought receipts.
No, I did bring receipts because you know what? This is one of my favorite quarterbacks of my lifetime. And
that one's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, bang. That's 2. That's...
Yeah. My fantasy team right now is crying in the corner watching these all over again.
Are you kidding me?
I should have won the championship. That team was... My fantasy team was so good. This man sold me.
I lost because of Calvin Ridley.
Screw you, Calvin.
The champ. Oh, my gosh.
I like Ridley, too. I feel bad saying that because he's a good player.
I do, too, but this is egregious. You know what I mean?
He was rusty.
He was rusty. He was. I did quietly wish that they would have retained him, but I do understand moving on.
They tried. I think Tennessee. They didn't move on really. They tried. Tennessee outbid them.
But I get it. It's like you're not. Yep. I'm not paying for. You watched the Trent Baalke sat down and watched this and said, you know what? I think we can probably maneuver. It just keeps going. That's the worst part. And these aren't bad throws. These are darts, dude. These are right in the hands, right on the numbers, right on the hash line. These are nice throws. They're tight windows. And these guys, I mean, come on, dude. That's in the bread basket.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right there.
Oh man, it's like he's got a target in the middle of that number 0, and Trevor's just hitting it every time.
Yep.
I mean, come on, dude. This is egregious. This is egregious.
And even the ones that are on the fence, it's like, okay, let's just say half of these you don't agree with, right?
Yeah.
That's still 8 touchting passes that
100%.
Didn't get recorded, right? It's like that's a
100%.
huge difference. For all you, by the way, you tweet and deleters, you non-believers,
baby.
you stat sheet Stevens, by the way, who just think that a football game is played on an Excel sheet.
Yep.
You guys right now are seeing what we're talking about with these catches or not or lack thereof completely changing the story on your narrative. Football is not a statistics game exclusively. It's not baseball.
No, it's not.
I
It's
just
not.
I don't it's just
Well,
annoying
and
to deal with.
to actually expand on what you just said, when I first watched that video, I watched it a few times and I went through and I counted 15 of those should have been touchdowns. And
Yeah.
I think there was, maybe 20 in there, 22, something of that nature. 15 of those, in my opinion, should have been touchdowns. No excuses, dropped touchdowns. So when you take the 21 touchdowns that Trevor Lawrence accumulated this season, and everybody looks at that and says, well, Gardner Minshew could do that. And then you watch that video and you go, okay, well, there's actually about 15 that should have been added onto that. So 21, 15, you get 36. That is the same number of Dak Prescott, who was the season leader in touchdowns. So do we question the contract if we look back and go, well, Trevor Lawrence did throw for 36 touchdowns last year. That's pretty good.
No, we don't.
You're
And
not
we don't
questioning
question
it
the
at all.
contract. We don't question the contract if he doesn't get hurt in Week 13 against Cincinnati, and this team
Sure
wins the
don't.
division and goes on to play Cleveland in the playoff, and
No.
they win that game instead of Houston. And by the
Yep.
way, no offense to the boy, we love him, but we're also not calling C.J. Stroud the star of the AFC South right now either.
No,
if that happens,
no, we're not.
So
No,
it's
we're
a
not.
lot of what ifs going on in Jacksonville.
Tons.
And I'm glad that you played that because it kind of perfectly tees me off for what I like offensively with this team. A couple guys, I'm going to mostly stick to the receivers, but I do want to mention two
Sure.
guys real fast. Right tackle Anton Harrison. He was a rookie last year. They drafted him in the late first out of Oklahoma. I think Trent Baalke is a horrible GM, but he does do pretty well in the first round sometimes. And I thought he really nailed this pick. If you watch his tape, he actually plays well above his age in terms of technique. His ability to shed defenders and use his hands is like very, very nuanced in a way that most rookies have not developed. I think he's going to get better and better. I think they got a guy at right tackle, and Trevor needs it. I mean, last year
So
he got
important, dude.
he got
It's
rid of the
so
ball
important.
at the fourth highest rate in the NFL last year, and that was by design. I mean, Doug Peterson was scheming up like fast throws. If you watch their footage, it's like he gets the ball and he's like ripping it very quickly, and that's because their O-line didn't hold up very well. And then real quick, you mentioned like, does this team have a bunch of guys? I think they have one guy, and that's Travis Ettienne.
Yep.
Travis Ettienne has had 1,400 scrimmage yards the last 2 seasons. The only guy who's done that back-to-back years with him at running back is Christian McCaffrey, who I feel like is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. This guy's really good. He's not top 5, I don't think, but he's right in that next class, and he's a lot closer to like the Saquon Barkleys, Josh Jacobs than like people are really willing to have a conversation about. He's very versatile, very quick. He's not a big bruiser runner, but he doesn't need to be. So I just wanted to touch on those guys before I talk about the receivers. With the receivers, I think the departure of Zay Jones, the departure of Calvin Ridley, really opened the door for the first round draft pick Brian Thomas Jr. I really like this guy. You can tell the audience about it too. That going into the draft, he was right there in my top 3. I liked him more than Odunze, and a lot of was like, that's crazy. But his ability to get open downfield and win on routes and then make plays on the ball is crazy. He has the size, which Ridley didn't. He has the speed that Ridley did, but he runs a 4.33. I mean, he's going to be one of the fastest receivers in football next year. So to combine a 6'3.5" build, long arms, a good vertical, athleticism and hands with the kind of like burn you can't cover me speed is like really, really impressive. And again, I mean, he was second in the entire in all of college football last year in deep touchdown catches. He had 10 touchdowns on fade routes and go routes alone. So what this is going to do, combined with the acquisition of Gabe Davis, who nobody like really believes in, let's be honest, but Gabe Davis does do one thing really well, and that is get open deep and make plays on the ball. So you've got my favorite deep threat rookie in this draft class, who I think has star power. I'm not sure he's going to be a star right away because he's got to do a lot of building his game with nuance, right? He didn't have a huge route tree at LSU. His role at LSU was literally run and get deep. But to me, he's like what people think Xavier Worthy is. Like, he's actually really good. You have that combined with Gabe Davis, who's going to be very much just a go deep and get it, clear the defense. And it's going to open up the door for guys that I really like. Evan Ingram, good tight end, 114 catches, 963 yards, and 4 touchdowns last year. He's a top 5 to 10 pass catching tight end in the NFL, who is a prime example of like bad first impressions ruining your image. He sucked in New York, I get it, but I don't know if anyone's been paying attention. The Giants suck, honestly. The Giants are terrible. So I don't care. He's balled the last 2 years he's been in Jacksonville. And, you touched on him earlier, but Christian Kirk, I think to me, he's listed at 5'11". He's probably more of a 5'9", 5'10". He's a really, really good slot receiver. I don't want him on the outside. He's got a little Wes Welker to his game. When we look at these like good route running slot receiver, pure slot receiver guys, these Edelman types, he's really got that in spades. And with the draft pick of Brian Robinson and the signing of Gabe Davis, it's going to clear space and keep the defense honest for Travis Ettienne to run, Travis Ettienne to catch passes, Evan Ingram to catch passes, and Christian Kirk to work out of the slot. And you've got levels now. So I don't think this is like quite on the level of Houston in terms of weapons, but I think that if Brian Robinson is who I think he's going to be, and we'll circle back and find out, this is on tape now, I think this offense has a chance to be very, very long ball, short ball, like, layered. And I think it could be a lot of fun. And like I said earlier, I mean, I believe in Doug. I think he runs a really good offense, and he learned from the best. So I think Trevor's going to have an easier time this year. And I just think that he just missed some spots with Calvin last year, who was a bit rusty. So I'm kind of looking forward to like the new flip. And, I just can't wait to see Brian Thomas Jr. in a Jags uniform, man, because he's a dog.
Hell yeah. I love it, man. I totally agree. I think sneaky good offense coming this year. I don't think they're world beaters. I don't think they're Philly or, Dallas or Detroit. I don't think they're any of those teams, but I do think we're going to look at the end of the year and go, ooh, those boys might be coming quietly. So yeah, no, I'm with you completely. Let's shift over to the defensive side of the ball. If we must. I think, yeah, right. I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Ew, stinky. No, it's not even really that it's stinky. It just feels like it's super like mid. Question marks all over that field, in my opinion. I'll let you cook on the front seven when comes the time. But I do want to talk about the secondary real fast, and I don't have a ton to say about them. You took Tyson Campbell with what was basically a first round pick a few years ago after the Lawrence and Ettienne picks. It was the first pick of the second round out of Georgia. He was really, really good in 2022, ending with an 80 PFF grade. He got a big contract, and then he was terrible last year. So I don't really know what to make of him. To be totally honest with you, you hope that he can tap back into that 22 version of himself. And if he can, you might have a sneaky good secondary, because you went out and you signed Ronald Darby from Baltimore, a 2-year, $8 million deal. So nothing that you're crazy committed to financially or long-term wise. Darby was really good last year in a very good Baltimore defense. It ends with a coverage grade of 71.7. He's credited with allowing 25 receptions on 51 targets. So he's allowing less than 50% targets thrown his way. Opposing quarterbacks saw a passer rating of 72.2 when they targeted him in coverage. So, if you can get Campbell back to what he was and you can get Darby to play at that level that he played last year, you might have a sneaky good secondary. But, I just don't. That's kind of a lot of what ifs. It's some. I think Darby's probably a little bit of fool's gold because of how good that Ravens defense was, and Campbell's just an interesting case when you have such a good season in 22 and such a bad season in 23. I don't know how to project you for the next season. You do have some depth here too. You got, you signed Darnell Savage, who had a really good, strong season with Green Bay last year. You have Andre Crisco, who's just the beacon of consistency. And then you have Antonio Johnson, who's a 5th-round pick out of Texas A&M. He's 22 years old. He only played 172 snaps last year, but he ended with a 73.8 PFF grade. So there might be something there. You don't really expect a ton out of 5th-round picks. But 22 years old, he's killing it in the coverage, pass rush, tackling. I mean, he's kind of all over the place. So I think there's potential here in the secondary, and they're going to have to take a big step if this team wants to be serious, especially in a division that has Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Josh Downs and Michael Pittman and now A.D. Mitchell and DeAndre Hopkins. There's really serious wide receivers in this division, and you got to be able to lock them down. So that's kind of my little take on the secondary. I think if we look back a year from now and say they underperformed, I wouldn't be shocked. But if you told me that they super performed, I wouldn't be shocked either. It's gonna be about if they can move together as a unit.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. We just covered a similar team in division, the Indianapolis Colts, and
Yep.
The way this defense is laid out is very similar to me in the way that I have some real optimism with the front seven, and then the back four I'm a little hesitant. It's not that I think they're bad. I'm confused. I don't quite understand. I got to see it. I got to see the cake bake a little bit. Before I talk about this front seven, I know I've alluded to it, but I really want to touch on Trent Baalke.
Is going through, Coach and I haven't sat down and gone through the final.
Was that a fart?
At the beginning, I told you that I feel like I'm in like with this team, and I don't understand why. I like the coach. I think the weapons are good. I like the running back. I'm a big fan of the quarterback, and it's a team that I'm rooting for. I'm not rooting against. So why can't I put my arms around this team? And I think it has to do largely with this GM. I'm sorry, Jacksonville fans. I think you have a bad GM. And a lot of that has to do with, primarily when it comes to drafting, reaching for players, overdrafting, multiple rounds ahead for guys who have traits but haven't proven it and end up getting to the NFL as these projects that never quite turn into finished homes. I think he's a pretty bad GM, to be honest with you. I don't think he's, the worst, but I don't think he's very good. And looking at this defense, I felt like I was confronted with a lot of this because, when we're studying these teams, we're going over recent, draft classes. We're like, okay, where did this guy end up? And it's just so many misses.
Rain dance! Let it rain! Let it rain! Iceman! Sandy! Sandy! White chocolate! Sandy! Raindrops!
In rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from Baalke, that when you wonder why this defense feels thin, that's why. And, it's sort of like he's like a lingerer, right?
Fuck. Yeah. Fucking lingerer, man.
Yeah, totally.
Linger.
Hardcore.
Like he's like this guy within the organization who has all this power over personnel, and I feel like he's holding this team back from greatness. That's my belief. I think a GM is incredibly important, just as important as a coach, arguably. And I think you have the coach. I think you have the quarterback. I think you've got the pieces. I just don't feel like your GM is filling out your team needs enough. So I kind of wanted to segue before I talk about the front seven, because it kind of alludes to like the secondary and some of the question marks on the front seven. So that the question marks don't need to be questions. That's why your GM kind of sucks.
Fair enough. Totally agree, by the way.
Yeah, and so getting into the front seven, I want to start with something that doesn't suck, and that is Josh Allen. This man is incredible. Obviously, the big news coming out of Duval was the 5-year, $141 million contract with 88 guaranteed. It sounds like a big number, I understand, but this man really, 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 really earned every single penny of this. I would have honestly liked to see him get re-signed last year and Jacksonville going to get ahead of this. I think they were a little late to the party paying him this much and signing him this late. And honestly, he got drafted in 2019, not a Trent Baalke pick. And he was good immediately, honestly. You could see it right away. When I talk about Aiden Hutchinson for my Lions, when I say he's a touch overrated, I feel like Aiden is discussed as Josh Allen, like with how Josh Allen is now versus how Josh Allen was. And it gives me hope seeing a guy like Josh Allen because although he was good in 19 and 20 and even 21, he wasn't a superstar. 22 and last year in particular, he's elevated to superstar level. 17 and a half sacks, 66 total tackles, an 89.5 PFF grade. And to me, he's a dark horse candidate for Defensive Player of the Year this year. I mean, I think if he does what he did last year or a step further, he's got to get discussed right up there with the Max Crosbys, the Nick Bosas. And honestly, for what he's done the last couple of years, he deserves to be talked about with those guys. I don't know if it's the small market thing, but he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He is an elite. Not a good, not a great, not a very good, an elite edge in this league right now. So shout out Josh Allen, man. Huge hats off to him. They brought in Eric Armstead from San Francisco. I like the signing. Again, this is sort of Trent Baalke getting like one of his guys from like the recycling bin back in the 49er days, right? So like, I loved this guy coming out of college. He was my first round pick with San Francisco. He's a good player. I think it's a good signing. I don't think Eric Armstead is a star per se. I think he was more of a merchant of San Francisco's defense versus being this like electric player on his own accord. But with Josh Allen and with the guy I'm going to discuss next, I think he has a chance to really be an impact player. So keep an eye out on Eric Armstead. I think he might have a couple of years left in the tank, and Jacksonville may benefit from that, especially with the quarterbacks in that division. They need that pass rush. And then, of course, our last but not least, real cornerstone guy that I want to touch on is Trayvon Walker. I don't mean to like use you as an example, but I have to because, we had conversation like leading into the episode about like different things. And you used the word bust with Trayvon Walker. And it's funny because I see that so often. And, I always like defer to you on a lot of this stuff because I feel like you get this, like you really get the game, you really get the players. And I feel like the reason that Trayvon Walker is considered a bust is not because Trayvon Walker is not a good football player. It's because Trent Baalke picked a late first rounder, number 1 overall. And the bigger indictment on him is that he hasn't been as good as Aiden Hutchinson, and he hasn't really been as good as Kayvon Thibodeau as a pass rusher. He has had 101 tackles combined for his first 2 seasons, so he is on the field making plays on the ball. He went up from 3 sacks his first year to 10 last year. But when you really dissect the sacks, to be honest with you, brother, it's a lot of like muddy pockets and him kind of like lucking into a sack and not being like the driving force of the sack. Does that make sense? Like not all sacks are created equal type of thing. Like he almost falls into sacks like way too often. I feel like Trayvon Walker has the potential to be a really good player. I just don't know that he can ever live up to number 1 because when I watch him, I just don't see a star. I think with Josh Allen, I think with Eric Armstead, I think he has a chance to be a big difference maker. I'd like to see him take a step forward. I'm rooting for him because, frankly, as a Lions fan, I feel like we stole from the city of Jacksonville by getting Aiden.
Yeah.
but I think he has a chance to be good, and he's a guy that I'm really, really keeping an eye on. Before we close out the line, I also want to talk about Mason Smith because they picked him in the second round as a defensive tackle out of LSU, and people want him to make an impact right away. I had a really hard time. Sometimes I have to throw my hands up and just say I don't know. His traits are really good. He's got like the arm length and the size that like Trent Baalke obsesses over, but he didn't really have the production at LSU. He was coming off an ACL last year, and I was doing some research onto him, and I don't know if people know this, but ahead of the draft evaluators had him in like the 4th or 5th. Like he was not up there in that class of, like the Texas boys that got picked like high, the D linemen. I'm talking about the tackles from Texas that got picked high this year. He wasn't in that group, and Baalke picked him as if he was. So that's another guy that I'm going to have my eye on this year on the D-line is Mason Smith, first year out of LSU. So we'll see, man. I don't know. It's just a weird
Trayvon Walker to me feels very much like the reincarnation of Jadeveon Clowney. A guy who like by all accounts is a good player. And that's where you have to evaluate bust, right? You can't say when I say he's a bust, it doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means that like you should have never been taken number 1 overall. And the same applies to Jadeveon Clowney. Your ceiling is Pro Bowler, not All Pro. And
you're
that's
totally right, by the way.
And if I'm drafting you number 1 overall, like you have to, the hope is you're a Hall of Famer. The hope is that you're at the minimum an All Pro. So just being a Pro Bowler is just unacceptable, and that's something that Trayvon Walker hasn't even done yet. So we'll see. I still have a lot of high hopes for the kid. He is a freak of nature, like physically. It might take the right D-line coach to kind of pull that out of him, or maybe just a little more maturity on his end. But hey. Thanks for Aiden Hutchinson. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to close it out, you're right. It's just like I think that when I see the word bust around him so much that he was difficult for me to evaluate in this process. Yeah. And I was almost surprised, like pleasantly, by being like, no, actually, he's like pretty good. He's a clear, like he's a starter. Like that's what he is. He's like a good starter.
A good piece.
And it's like,
it's a good piece on your defense.
Okay, like it's just so it's tough, man. And it's not his fault that Trent Baalke decided to like reach up after a combine and pick him first overall. So I give the guy a break is my thing to like, not to you obviously, but like to fans in general. Like you got a good player. It's try to get that out of your head that he was number 1. But it's tough, man. It's weird GM.
100%. But yeah, where are you? Where do you see this team at the end of the year? Let's make some predictions for everybody and see where we end up.
I had a hard time with this one. I had a really hard time with this one because it felt like, last season did happen and Houston's offseason happened. And prior to that, I had you winning the division as long as Trevor was there because the AFC South has been in the toilet for years. And I just can't go there. I like the Texans a little more than you. I'm sorry.
Same.
It's, don't blame Trevor. Don't blame Doug. Don't blame the players. Honestly, blame your GM. Like there's just some holes that I see. Will Anderson, that's a number 1 overall edge. It's anyway. I just can't find myself to like fully pick you to win the division, but I like you a lot. And I still feel the same way about you. When all the popular guys had a crush on you a couple of years ago after you won the playoff game, I realized that you put on a little weight, and some of those guys, they got girlfriends and, maybe you're not checking, you lost some followers on Instagram, but I'm still there. I think that you guys are gonna come in second in the AFC South. But I think you're going to make the playoffs, and I think once you're there, anything can happen. I expect a big step forward from Trevor this year, and I like some of these pieces. You got a star QB, in my opinion, an emerging star. You got a star edge, and you got some talent on offense. I think that you're going to be. I'm going to close it out with a 10 and. You know what? Let's go bold. I'm going to go 11-6. 11-6 this year. Second in the division.
Okay.
Wild card playoff team. Wild card team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I like the positivity we're ending on. I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel good about 10-7. I'm not going to be so bold. I think 10-7 feels right for you guys. I love your quarterback. Don't love your defense. Think your front seven has a good chance to be sneaky good. Love Josh Allen. I think you need a left tackle. I think you need a center, and I think you need Brian Thomas to be a wide receiver 1 this year, and I'm not sure he can be that. That's kind of where I end with you guys. I think second in the division feels right. I do think you're going to make a playoff game, and just like Ian said, anything can happen at that point. You have a damn good quarterback. I don't care what the naysayers say on the Twitter's verse. Like he's like that, and a healthy Trevor Lawrence and a tapped in Doug Peterson, anything can happen. That's just how I feel.
I think they're going to be a team on a mission this year.
Yes, agreed.
I think everybody forgot about them, like I said, and they've moved on to Houston, and there's a lot of disrespect. I think the contract disrespect. I think Trevor's going to hear a lot of this disrespect from you guys, from you haters, sipping on that haterade.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see how they respond. And yeah, I mean, I'm going bold with a couple of these teams just because I think there's some sneakers every year. So I have you right there. I think it's going to be a real dogfight with Houston. I don't think that they're leaps and bounds better than you. I didn't forget what happened.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, I mean, you would have won that thing last year if Trevor didn't get hurt. I believe that. So I can't throw you into the trash bin.
They split last year too. I feel like that goes unnoticed too. I mean,
they're pretty
Houston
even.
Houston beat him up in one game, and Jacksonville beat him up in the other, and that's just what happened. You know, I mean,
but it's all narrative.
It's
all narrative. Everything, like I said, they were the dark horse. You know, they were the Houston Texans last year, and they let everybody down. So everyone's pissed off at them. So they've thrown them in the trash heap. And now the Houston Texans are a Super Bowl dark horse. You know, they're betting. You know, oh, don't sleep on the Texans. They could do it. And it's like, to me, I just think it's a lot closer than people are willing to talk about. Like, why
Totally
has
agree.
Houston like moved past you? I like them a little more than you, but.
Yeah.
It
close. Remains to be seen, my friend. It remains to be seen.
It does.
We will find out soon enough, won't we?
Yes, but guys, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, sir.
Duval, Jacksonville, get after us in the comments. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
You know, are you guys into this
Get us
team?
to
Are you
500.
guys? Yeah,
Road to 500 subscribers.
Yes,
Road to 500
please.
subscribers.
We're so close. And to everybody who has subscribed, who's watching as a return viewer, thank you guys so much for real.
We appreciate you so much.
Peace. Go Jags, baby.
Peace.